Hello, everyone, and welcome to Tunnel Vision, a show brought to you by USCFootball.com. I'm Jack Smith, joined in the studio by Ryan Abraham and Chris Trevino. It's been a while since we've done a Tunnel Vision, so thank you guys so much for tuning on. Make sure, as always, leaving a like on the video, leaving a comment wherever you're watching. We're on Facebook, we're on Twitter, we're also on YouTube. We'll be able to put some of those comments on the screen. But guys, it's been a while since we've been back in the studio. USC had the spring game yesterday. The transfer portal is back open, so we have a lot to talk about tonight. Where do you guys want to start it off?
Yeah, we do, and welcome everyone back to Tunnel Vision. We should have done a couple of these episodes during spring fall. We didn't do it, but we're doing a recap here today, which is great. We'll try to do some of these during the off season and stuff, kind of get through this stuff. There'll be a lot of, I guess we got like 5 months until we see some Coliseum football again, but definitely a lot of stuff to talk about. The transfer portal window opening up for another couple of weeks, tweaking the roster, off-season workouts, and then, of course, heading into what will be an early fall camp because USC has a spring a week 0 game, so that should be a lot of fun. But it's good to be back here and doing Tunnel Vision. We've been doing some live shows with the podcast, so it kind of feels like Tunnel Vision. We have the Tunnel Vision intro, but this is the Sunday night Tunnel Vision. This is what we love.
Sunday night baseball. Yeah, I don't.
You're not a big fan.
Yeah, I'm not. You make me do a mini Tunnel Vision every Tuesday. I don't need more live me. That's my point. They don't need more live me. And I was trying to figure out when the last time we did.
The world needs more live you. Come on now.
I disagree.
We did one with Shotgun, like pre-spring ball. So we kind of previewed spring ball.
Okay.
That was the last Tunnel Vision one.
I don't know I literally can't remember the last time I was on Tunnel Vision. Like, what was the last thing we did? I don't know.
Yeah.
I'll have to go back and look, but I don't know. But we're back. I'm back.
You're back. I'm back. Jack is back.
I am back.
I'm
the reason.
We had some transportation issues, maybe, or whatever. I mean, he's a student. Like, what are you going to do? Like this, we're like 25 miles from campus. So
but he's double back because he missed the whole week of spring practice doing baseball. It's also baseball season, so I was making fun of him when he came back last Tuesday.
Maybe with USC going 0-3 on the weekend out in Corvallis, Shotgun's just going to end the podcast now. We're not covering baseball, but who knows? Tomorrow's podcast of the Dato Download, go check it out if you haven't already. Might be a little less of a positive one than we have recently, but we're not here to talk about baseball. We're here to talk about USC football. And the spring game was yesterday. The defense came out with a 42-34 victory, and I think that's where we should probably start. And I know they were spotted a bunch of points before the game, but the defense looked like it took a step up. Lincoln Riley was talking about it after, specifically the front seven. I thought the DBs played pretty well. Where do you guys want to start it off? I think we should lean towards the defense.
Yeah, we can do that, like you said. So the scoring was interesting. This was not last year. They had kind of split squads. This was a offense versus defense. The defense starts with 24 points and basically get 3 points for anything unless you score or get a safety. So if a defensive score was 7 points, everything else was 3, like a turnover, missed field goal, things like that. So the defense was able to put up some points. It got very interesting when we had that. What was it? Who the interception? Covington.
Jacoby Covington.
2
interceptions. The game sealing and the one in the end zone, which was initially counted as a touchdown and then reversed to a pick, but they let the offense keep the points, the touchdown. So I don't.
It was weird. So Miller Moss throws a pass to Dorian Singer, and Jacoby Covington comes away with they're both on the ground, and he comes away with the ball, and then they call it a touchdown. He's like, "What?" And then they eventually, so they give the offense the 7 points, and then they look back. And they say, we're actually going to give the defense 3 points for the turnover. But the offense kept their 7 points. And then after halftime, I think it was, they took the 7 points away. But I thought the scoring was, it was close. You get some stops.
Doing all that, taking away, letting him keep it, overturning it, that felt very Pac-12 officiating. So I think it fit.
It is, yeah.
It was very Pac-12 officiating. So I think
it was on
fit.
brand for sure.
And it was on Pac-12 Network, so not a lot of people watched the game anyway. So all felt very on brand for Pac-12.
Unless you were there. And it was a little over 25,000 people, which is less than last year. I thought we'd see some more.
It was Coachella weekend.
Maybe that was why Coachella. I'm not sure. But, it was a nice day. It was cool to be out there. People wanted to see how different the defense would look. And I think you got to see a different looking defense. The front seven, especially, we saw Keon Barrs, we saw Jamil Muhammad, you saw guys getting after it. Solo's been kind of our one-man wrecking crew out there. So I think overall the defensive front looks like it was improved. We saw, freshmen like Christian Pierce make a really nice play picking off Malachi Nelson. We already mentioned Jacoby Covington with a couple of interceptions. There was I think Jamil Muhammad had a forced fumble sack on Malachi Nelson that was eventually covered by Max Williams. I think you saw a deeper secondary and some guys that can really play there. The most concerning, everything that was concerning on the defensive side seemed to be with stopping the run. I think they did a nice job. No receiver really kind of went off. Caleb Williams, 3 plays, 75 yards, a touchdown to start the game. He would be my MVP. I know, he just looked unstoppable, and then he didn't play the rest of the game. But the run game, Amarian Peterson, Quinten Joyner, we only saw 1 carry from Austin Jones, and it was, one of those 3 plays. It was like a 20-something yard run in that 75-yard touchdown drive. So there was that. Marshawn Lloyd had 1 catch for like 24 yards and making dudes miss and stuff. He looked like a grown man. It's like they didn't really need to see much from him. But you see the 2 freshman Texas running backs kind of going crazy out there. They both scored touchdowns. And I think the run game, not being able to stop the run was probably the most concerning. There was the pass rush I thought was pretty good. You saw the quarterbacks sort of running for their lives a little bit, but they did not do a good job stopping the run. So I think there were some encouraging signs on the defense from my point of view, but not being able to stop the run was not one of those encouraging signs.
I was probably a little bit kind to the run defense and tackling, 2 of the bigger issues that USC had, the defense had last season. When we did instant analysis, I was probably a little bit too kind for those 2 points. And after watching the game, watching it back, because, I only watched the game through the lens of my camera because I'm filming highlights. So I only get really a small taste of the game itself until I can go back and watch and look at clips again. So, yeah, I agree with you that I should have been more harsh on the run defense because they did get gashed a lot of times. And this is why fans have been clamoring for more defensive tackles, more interior defensive linemen to help out with the run defense and plug up those run holds, which seem to be very open for the USC running back. So that is something that still needs to be worked on. And the tackling, I looked at it back when I was looking at my clips, like there was, that's a missed tackle. That's a missed tackle. Amarian Peterson just hurdled a guy. That's a missed tackle. And I see it both ways. Like there were some moments where they had good tackling, but again, missed tackles happen in games, and credit to those guys for making the plays. Marshawn Lynch hitting the spin move to get out of that, or Amarian Peterson to have the athleticism to make that hurdle. But there was a bunch of missed tackles that I saw, and yes, that needs to get fixed. So, but I also give credit to the offensive players for making them, miss those tackles. Excuse me, but yeah, those are still 2 of the biggest issues that USC fans are concerned about: run defense and tackling. Mixed results on Saturday, so those are definitely things that still need to be hit on throughout the course of the offseason as we move into the summer workouts, and then fall camp. And hopefully those will take a step forward as we move into the season.
Yeah.
It's hard because you never really know who to praise because if, the defense isn't stopping the run, hey, maybe that's because the offensive line is blocking it up well. If someone gets hurled, it's a running back on the same team that's hurdling the guy. So you never really know who to praise. And I think Lincoln Riley mentioned it yesterday. It's like he has to focus on both sides of the ball. It's if one side makes a good play, you never know if that means the other side didn't make a good play. So you kind of come out of it and you're not exactly sure how to analyze it. But I think the fact that it was competitive and it was back and forth, like Lincoln Riley said, it was all spring. Definitely seemed the coaching staff was happy with the way that the game went, that it wasn't all one-sided either way. And I think that's kind of what they're looking for in these 15 times they get to go out in the spring.
Yeah, and I think, it was not a full game. It was 2 15-minute halves. We saw like the starting offensive line going out there for the first drive, and then it was kind of a mix and match. And sometimes you'd see most of the defensive starters, sometimes you'd see a mix around. I think they did a good job of just playing a lot of young guys. You know, there wasn't necessarily like, hey, this is what the offense is going to look like, this is what the defense is going to look like. And you don't know. I mean, Lincoln Riley's talked about this too. I think after the we got to see a open practice on Monday of, I guess it was last week or 6 days ago or whatever it was. And at the end of the scrimmage or whatever, the team periods, there was a couple interceptions, and Lincoln Riley, passed along the word to us. It's like, sometimes things happen, but the drill was meant for those things to happen too. And so I think some of it is just like, okay, they were working on this, they were working on that. Like we didn't see any run game the whole practice that we saw on Monday. We got to see a lot of it yesterday. So yeah, you don't need to take away like, okay, here's a declaration on the USC defense because of what I saw in the spring game. So I think you can see individual guys make plays and go, okay, this is something promising. Like I think the running back room is going to be very good. And I think we thought that going in, it could be an Austin Jones, but you bring in Lloyd and he looks really good. And the two freshman tailbacks from Texas look really good. And we saw some Rayleigh Brown in space in the slot, and he made some nice plays. He spun, I think it was Taka Curtis around or something, made him so he was going sideways and then turned upfield on. He was just like in a heartbeat, and it was crazy. It was crazy good, but so I think you could take things away like that. Like I really like what the running back room is going to be. You say, hey, I saw some cool things from like a Dorian Singer or a Zach Branch. But taken away sort of like schematically, like, I don't know, this defense looking bad, stop at the run. I'm not thinking you're going to take that away from what we saw in the spring game.
Right. I think it's very hard to look at a spring game and learn a lot, like you just said. And we talked about it, me and Jack, multiple times on Instant throughout the course of spring camp is like, we're not going to learn a whole lot. We won't figure out if this will be a better tackling team. We won't figure out if they're going to be more consistent in the pass rush. We won't figure out if they're going to be a good run defense. We won't know those things until they start playing actual games on Saturday. The spring game is just like a showcase to go out there. But you can take away observations about certain players and maybe a little bit about certain position groups. So it was really nice to just get out there, see some guys move around. They did look bigger. They did look longer. They did look more athletic. You can get excited about the running back room. You can get excited about that crop of receivers, which is adding more firepower in the summer. Just a reminder, Jacoby Lane, who was in the Coliseum, and Deuce Robinson will be joining that fray for the wide receivers and tight ends. So more weapons are coming, but you can get excited, about a Solomon Tuliaupupu who was, really transformed from linebacker, emerging as a defensive lineman, and really refined his technique, as Lincoln Riley said. Last year was just trying to get by you with the bull rush. Now he's added more, moves to his arsenal in terms of getting to the quarterback, and we're seeing him have more of an impact. And I've been told, he had a really, really good spring camp, and Lincoln Riley echoed that in his presser yesterday. So you can take away individual performances and look like, okay, this guy's looking like he's going to be a guy that helps us out. Or, maybe this side of the offensive line is looking really good. But it's hard to just take away overall takeaways from the offense or the defense, or we won't have those questions answered specifically about the defense until fall, until the week gets going.
Yeah, and I think one of the things Lincoln Riley said in the press conference yesterday, and part of it was talking about like a guy like Solo. Yes, there's new players out there. Do you like what Mason Cobb brings to the table? Do you like what Jamil Muhammad or Keon Bars? There's a bunch of guys that look like they're going to contribute, but he was also talking about guys that are coming back that look like they're going to take steps forward and be a better player. And like Solo was one of them. I forget some of the other guys that he talked about, but that it's not just the new players that were added, but really getting improvements out of the guys that were there. Another year in the system and all that. So that's, the justification for keeping the staff the way it was because it's going to be like, hey, there's continuity. We're going to bring everyone together. A guy like, Kalen Bullock, who I talked to yesterday after the game, just being in year 2, he can tell now he's been in the system. He understands it. Last year, it was new to everyone. Now when someone comes in, a Christian Pierce comes in, and he can talk to him about it and say, hey, here's what we expect from you, and this is what we do, and that's why we do this. None of that was happening last year. So some of the guys that just were on the roster as holdovers, they should be, Lincoln Riley seems very bullish on them being a lot better this year.
One of those guys, obviously, Sierra Wright,
Yes.
who Lincoln Riley has talked about multiple times, and me and Jack talked about on Instant. I thought he had a really nice spring game. I think there were a couple flags thrown his way, but for the most part, he was doing what he was doing and, breaking up some passes, being a guy who can take over as that number one cornerback from Mekhi Blackman, who's off to the NFL or, hopefully drafted this end of this month. Is that the draft or something like that? Yeah,
Couple weeks.
Yeah, like
coming up, but
week and a half or something. Right?
Sierra Wright is
Maybe 2
someone
weeks.
that Riley has talked about taking that next step. We saw him take that jump last year as he moved into a started 9 games. Kind of fell into a rotation when Jacoby Covington there at the end, but he kind of talked about how Sierra did that is when things really started to slow down for him, and it's starting to slow down even more there in spring camp. And I think you saw the plays being made or the playmaking ability capable of Sierra Wright, and that was something that Dante Williams also mentioned, that he has the confidence, he's making plays out there, and he's having a lot of fun, which, it's football. Should be fun.
Yes.
And, you're seeing that growth from a second year guy in this defense, and you're hoping if a handful of guys can have jumps like Sierra is doing or Kalen Bullock is doing, you feel good about the defense moving in the right direction in 2023.
Yeah, I mean, Dejon Benton's another guy that matches that second year in the defense kind of mold. He had a sack the other day. Sam Green, the rush end freshman, he's one of those guys that's the new guys that they brought in, after saying we need to upgrade the front seven. Lincoln Riley mentioned yesterday that the coaching staff really knew all of last year, this is a place we really have to add in the offseason, and they go out and add a 4-star Sam Green. He has a sack in the game, and I think I echo, I think it was Ryan said it, that you really felt like the quarterbacks were running for their life a lot, and whether that's moving around the offensive line and seeing what fits, or it's just the defense is bigger physically and they're able to use better pass rush moves. I think it was a very noticeable difference, as Lincoln Riley said, with that front seven. They look bigger, they look faster, and maybe they still have work to do stopping the run, but you're starting to feel like it's trending towards front seven that the coaching staff will be happier with.
Yeah, I think there's, you saw some individual plays being made. And, if you were to take something away from that, where like, I like a number 44 out there. He looks pretty good as a freshman. And, or, number 10 or, Muhammad, any of those guys, you're like, okay, they're getting off the quarterback. I think this is a positive, as opposed to like, well, the whole front seven stinks because they weren't really stopping the run. But I think that's some of the stuff you can take away from it, like Jack was saying. It's just that there's different, better individuals, and some of the guys that were on the roster do look better as well. So if you want to take away that it looks like the personnel, the drop-off after the starters, all that stuff looks like it's improved. And so if you're a USC fan, you're hoping that equates to a better defense. It's going to be hard to not be a better defense. It's just how much better they were last year.
They're deeper, they're bigger, they're more athletic, they're longer than they were last year. So again, does not guarantee a turnaround, but they've at least made some moves and made some adjustments to, on paper, be a better defense than they were last year. So we just have to go out and see it.
Yeah.
I guess before we move on to offense, kind of the one position group we haven't mentioned is the linebackers. We got to see Mason Cobb out there. There was a stretch where he had a really good play in coverage on Taj Washington, and then Shane Lee had some pretty good deep coverage down the middle. I thought the linebacking room was a mixed bag, but what did you guys see out there yesterday?
Yeah, I think that was back-to-back like coverage plays. I think it was the end of the first half. Maybe they batted some balls down, and I think the Mason Cobb one, it was like a longer developing play, and he ran from sideline to sideline to make that one.
Was that the one to Barlow? No,
it was Taj Washington on the sideline.
Yeah, and then I didn't get to see a lot, or at least I didn't notice a lot of Tackett Curtis. I mean, people saw that Rayleigh Brown sort of put that move on him, but. I didn't come away like thinking a whole lot about the linebackers, which sort of been the theme of the last couple of years watching this defense. So maybe that's not a great sign. But there was, like Jack mentioned, a little stretch there where you saw some plays from the linebackers.
Yeah, there were some moments, like those 2 coverage plays. I believe Rajon Davis had a sack. I think they gave it to somebody else, but I watched clearly in the clips. You can see on my field level highlights where Rajon touches him and he's like, what the heck, guys? I touched him, and they finally blew the whistle. So Rajon came out with a sack, was good. Tackett Curtis didn't, flash as much as you thought he would. There's a couple plays where he kind of was trying to make the tackle, but was just a little bit short. Did have that moment with Raleigh Brown. So, but he's still, all the hype that has been placed on him, you have to remember, he is a true freshman. He is technically should still be in high school. Give him time. He has the work ethic. He has the talent. I think it'll work itself out. Maybe a little bit of a deer in the headlights kind of situation, being, in front of fans for the first time. He has a lot of pressure on him.
Yeah.
But, it's still a freshman. I'm not gonna knock him down just because he had a couple of freshman moments in a spring game. That happens. That's what a spring game is for, to get that confidence. If you remember, Kalen Bullock really struggled in his first spring game, got torched a couple times down the field, ended up going on to be a freshman All-American that year. So a valuable learning experience happens in the spring game, and then you use that for your summer and your fall and then in your season. So don't worry about it if you didn't notice Tackett a lot, or he had a couple moments where he missed a tackle or whatever. He'll use that, he'll get better, and then we'll see what happens during the season.
Yeah, and coaches will mention that, tight end and linebacker, two of the harder positions to really come in as a true freshman and be good right away. And, I think NFL coaches echo that as well. It's like there's a reason why, it takes some time to develop, is because these are hard positions to learn. In high school, a lot of times you can go out there and just hit the guy with the ball. This time you've got the developing plays that Lincoln Riley's the one drawing them up, and you have to try and figure out where everyone's going, who everyone is. And so linebacker's one of those hard positions where you have to come in as a true freshman. But yeah, I think the linebacking room was kind of a wash. You saw some plays where they missed some tackles, but you did see some improvement in coverage. And this is all without mentioning Eric Gentry, who we've heard a lot of notes about this week despite his injury, but hasn't played all spring, didn't get a chance to play yesterday. So that's another person you have in that room. And so I think they feel pretty good about the room. I thought it was nice to see Mason Cobb make that play on Taj Washington. And I asked him about it after the game, and he said that in spring practice, I think it was a couple weeks ago, that Taj had that exact same play and caught it on the sideline on him. And he said when he saw it come across his face in this game, he wasn't going to let it happen again. So it's those learning moments that Chris talks about where, maybe the one that we see in the spring games, the one where the offense does catch it, but then the next time, rolling through summer or going into the fall is where they realize their mistake and they get it right the second time. And that's what spring ball is for. And I think we saw a lot of that in a bunch of different positions yesterday. But make sure you guys are leaving comments on the stream so we can put them up at the end. Let's move on to the offense. And I think the big highlight outside of the Caleb Williams led 75 yards and 70 seconds drive was the running back room, led by, you had Marshawn Lloyd and Austin Jones make one good play each, and then you had the young guys really take over and step up. So where do you guys want to start there?
Yeah, we're gonna do like a top performers thing, and I think Chris, you sent in your list, and I was gonna have Caleb Williams be the top. It's like, yeah, he only had 3 plays, but he just looked like Caleb Williams. You're like, okay, like
it's almost like you have to do the list like top performers minus the returning Heisman winner. You only play 3 plays. It's kind of an interesting deal that way, but sure, yeah, that's fair.
You could, stick him in there. Looked really sharp. Obviously, there wasn't really much that he could do, but I think that was like the true feeling of this is probably what the offensive line was like. When you had Michael Tarquin in there, Kingston playing guard, Monheim playing the other tackle spot.
Monheim playing a little center too.
He did a little center in the game, but like as far as starting position goes, Didich being at center and Quinones at the left guard spot, and you got Ethan White, whatever. There's some options coming forward, and they might still hit the portal, which we're going to talk about the portal in a little bit. But it looked like a pretty solid starting offensive line, and it just sort of blitzkrieged the defense. I talked to Kalen Bullock, and he was just sort of like, yeah, they just came out like boom, 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 and they sort of settled in after that. But would you have been settled in if Caleb Williams was still quarterbacking and stuff? So I think that was, if you were worried there was going to be sort of drop off after a Heisman year, like, nah, I think he's still going to be really good. And Lincoln Riley said afterwards, like, what do you need to see from him? This is really a showcase for some of the young guys. Yeah. I thought, for Malachi Nelson, and I think Lincoln Riley talked about it. He had that his non-throwing shoulder injury. He basically just started at the beginning of spring ball. He didn't have any of the summer workouts, the winter workouts and things like that. And I think the analogy that Lincoln Riley said would be like, you're a golfer coming off an injury and like your first round is in the Masters or something, you're playing in a tournament right away. So, I thought there were some ups and downs. He had some, good stuff and some struggles. And, I thought Miller Moss did a pretty good job kind of coming in. He saw the majority of the work on that side of the ball because we didn't see, Caleb Williams most of the time. I thought, he did have that pick in the end zone. Really, the only touchdown pass, I believe, was Caleb Williams. So the passing game wasn't like on fire outside of Caleb Williams, but like Jack mentioned, like the run game was really good. And if you saw, I think if you look at Gavin Morris's like Instagram story, he was doing the whole thunder and lightning thing with Quinten Joyner and Amarian Peterson, and those guys they looked the part. When we would see like Peterson come down, what is he? Is he 6'2"?
He's listed at 6'2", about 230 pounds, 20 pounds, something like that.
Yeah, he came out. I think one time I took a picture of him coming out of the tunnel, like with shoulder pads on, with no jersey, and it just looks like he looks like a grown man that's been in college for a couple of years. So the thunder lightning thing I thought worked, and both of those guys, looked really good. We'll have to see, pass protection, all that stuff. There's other things you want to do as a running back, but we got to see the freshman running backs run, and they did a nice job with it.
No blocky, no rock.
Yeah.
If you don't pass block, you're not going to get carries. So that's something that freshmen typically struggle with. But Austin Jones had some complimentary things to say about those young guys working on their pass blocking, specifically Marion Peterson, who is obviously a really big dude, but he says he has really good patience as a pass blocker, which is obviously a key when you're doing that. And he said, he's way better than I am. Maybe not way better, but he said he's better than I was as a true freshman when pass blocking. So Marion Peterson, shaping up to possibly be a really, really good pass blocker down the line. But those guys, are able to handle like a Rio college blitz and pick up those and be trusted to block for a quarterback and, a Heisman winner in Caleb Williams. Yeah, they're going to get some touches, but a very stacked running back room. But it was great to see those guys get out there. Quinten Joyner showed off that deceptive speed. A lot of people aren't really talking about him being a speed guy, but showed that speed, had that big touchdown run, that big run up the sidelines where he, kept his balance after being knocked around. I think Kalen Bullock was the one who came and gave him a knock, but able to stay upright, get a couple extra yards, and the big man, Marion Peterson, getting up, showing hey, I have some athleticism and hurdling a Max Williams. I put that clip on Twitter on Saturday. So yeah, lots of good things out of those two.
Well, yeah, I mean, Quinten Joyner looks the part as well in how much speed he has, the elusiveness. If you go to Chris's field level highlights, which are out on YouTube right now, you see him hit the hole, and he knows exactly where he's going. He's weaving through defenders, and it's like, wow, he's running away from everyone. That's how fast Quinten Joyner is. And, we've seen that there's fast players on this USC defense, and Joyner was kind of knifing through the middle of it on his early run that he got down towards the goal line and then eventually scored. He looks the part too. And for USC, if you've got Marshawn Lloyd and Austin Jones duking it out for the starting job, you still have Darwin Barlow, who I know Chris is a fan of for his grown man runs, which he showed off in the Rose Bowl last year. And then you've got these two freshmen that are barking at everyone's heels. That's five deep in the running back room, and it maybe makes sense why you have a guy like Raleek Brown moving out to wide receiver, because you're trying to get all the skill talent on the field at the same time. And so whether it's this year or whether it's next year, I think USC fans and USC coaches in general coming out pretty happy about the way that the two freshman running backs looked.
Yeah, and I think so with the post-game press conference, you had Lincoln Riley, who answered most of the questions, of course, and they had Jacoby Covington, who got a question at the end, and Marshawn Lloyd. I believe Lloyd's question was about like the freshman running backs, and certainly high praise from him. Going there, it was kind of interesting to pick him as one of the offensive players when he really only had one touch.
But it was a really nice touch.
It was a really good touch of the game. But I guess but I think that shows that what they think of him as a leader. But in his leadership, being able to sing the praises of those freshman running backs, I thought that was that said a lot as well. So yeah, that the run game. I think the run game was featured more. It was just sort of like a hit or miss thing with the pass. We talked to Dorian Singer afterwards, and he was sort of kind of a soft-spoken guy, but you saw, the Monday practice we saw, he had the biggest play in the passing game of that time, and you can just kind of see like, oh yeah, this is a guy that's going to be able to go out there and make some plays, and that one, it could have had a touchdown that ended up being an interception, but there's a lot of potential there. We saw potential with Zach Branch. I think they listed him with like 8 catches. Didn't seem like he had that many.
It had like 8 for 94, which I don't think is accurate.
It didn't seem like that was real, but
maybe 5 catches. They tried to get him the ball early.
He had a drop.
He had one drop, and there was a couple passes that were kind of off target. I think one like skipped the ground before it hit him, and one was like a little bit too high. They were trying to get him the ball, but there was a little bit of disconnect. He did have the drop, but didn't make it up with that long catch down the sideline.
That was a Miller Moss. It was a really nice pass, Miller Moss over the shoulder to Branch, and that was one of the better plays, I thought.
And then he had that play over the middle where he's trying to pick up the first down. He kind of stiff armed Shane Lee.
Yes.
He did get a stiff arm. Small but mighty. He's a small guy, super fast, but you don't really think about his strength. But he's built, and he will stiff arm you if he gets the opportunity. So, we got to see a little bit. I really wanted to see him take the top off. Didn't quite take the top off with that catch he had. I wanted him to go all the way down. But if Jalen Smith did not hold on to him, holding on for dear life to keep him tethered to him, he was going for 6. You were not going to catch Zach Branch if he got loose there.
No, for sure. And I think Branch came on a little bit later. Rayleigh Brown, really didn't see much of him early on, and then kind of came in later. I think 4 catches or something like that, coming out of the slot. We already mentioned the nice, but I mean, it was literally like he was running sideways and then just on a dime turned upfield, and that's one of the things we saw where he was sort of running, east and west instead of north and south. And it was almost like he was thinking about it, like, why am I running sideways? He's just like, boom, I'm going to cut up, and it was a really nice play from him.
Yeah, I mean, just a dynamic athlete, and I've said this before, but Rayleigh Brown was being recruited to play wide receiver by some schools. That's how good he was. He would have been a high-level wide receiver prospect. Obviously, he's a little bit small, kind of a slot back, probably even smaller than Zachariah Branch. Not as fast as him, but definitely that elite level quickness. And that's just going to be a freaking headache for a defensive coordinator to have. Maybe you're looking over at Zach Branch in this slot, and then Rayleigh Brown in this slot, and then Brendan Rice on the outside, or Deuce Robinson way outside, 6'6", 6'4", 6'2", and then 2 elite level quickness guys. It's just terrifying to think about as a defensive coordinator.
No Cliff Kingsbury sightings, right? We didn't see any.
I didn't see any.
Yeah, I didn't see any either. So
Chris,
I wasn't sure.
Chris, you did see Greg Brown though, right? I thought I saw that in your.
I did see Greg Brown. We were on the peristyle end zone at the end of the game, and it's very different from a normal game because it's like the sidelines are so crowded and the end zones are so crowded. But there was like literally no one except for me, and I noticed that Greg Brown was kind of over my shoulder. He was on his headset, kind of watching defense and talking. I'm not quite sure what he was saying, but yeah, it was just me and him. Greg Brown hanging on the end zone.
Nice. Well, I'm sure we'll see Kingsbury coming up soon. And one of when we're talking on the defensive side, Romello Height was dressed, but I don't think he did anything. Yeah, but like guys like Romello Height could be a key person. Solomon Byrd, Tyrone Taleni, all those guys were out, right? No Eric
run
Gentry.
Down that list real quick of guys that didn't participate.
Do you have the list there?
Yeah, I mean off the top of my head.
Okay.
I mean Romello Height dressed but did not participate. Zion Branch dressed but did not participate. Tyrone Taleni and Stanley Tauafu did not participate. Latrell McCutcheon did not participate. Malachi Crawford, the freshman, did not participate. Mekhi Lemon did not participate. Solomon Byrd did not participate, and those were kind of the main. Those were guys who were not dealing with surgeries like Eric Gentry or a Jude Wolfe, who were obviously out for the game. So those were the kind of guys going into camp and Jamar Sakona, defensive lineman, also did not participate. So those were kind of the main guys that were fine in spring, and then for whatever reason did not participate on Saturday.
Yeah.
I don't know if I'm deaf. Did you mention Zion Branch?
I did.
Okay, yeah.
As a dress, but did not participate. Those guys are coming off surgeries, Zion and Romello Height, so just being cautious. No need to force them. Ryan always does this. No need to force them.
We were getting some comments about your mic wasn't as loud as it could be, I guess. So
I always get a comment about mic and loudness and all that kind of stuff.
Nice.
It's just the tunnel vision. I forgot the word.
To be fair, Chris has been working all weekend.
Tradition.
Yeah.
Tunnel vision.
Chris has been working all weekend. He's tired.
Don't say I'm tired because
here we go.
Now I'm rubbing my eye. Now they're doing the thing where they're like, if I
you might as well yawn now.
No, you can't really do a fake.
Full disclosure, I took a little nap before the show. It's like it's been a long weekend.
It is for you.
It was very brief. It was like a 20-minute.
Sure. That's what a nap should be. Anything longer than that screws up your whole day.
Oh, nice.
Take it from Chris, I guess. I think, yeah, you mentioned some of those players that did not participate. And if USC gets a couple of those to be the guys that they wanted to, they could be real X factors. I mean, we saw Solomon Byrd when he was on last year really dominated that whole Fresno State game. He's one of the big reasons that it was such a big USC win. You've got guys like Romello Height who came from Auburn. And then Zion Branch is a real X factor if he can take over with Kalen Bullock at the safety position and be the guy that they recruited him to be, because I think people forget just how big of a get that was for the Trojans, that could be a big deal. And so I think you're seeing, and I know that we've talked about this on Instant and a lot of other different things, but you're seeing the depth. Like, at some point, one of these guys, even if they play well, isn't going to get a chance to start because USC has more talent now on defense, where the depth and the guys that if someone is injured, someone that's going to step up, you feel a little bit better if it's Zion Branch stepping in for maybe a Max Williams than if in past years, who's been that second line going out for USC. So I think that, the coaches have mentioned it, but you do definitely see it with the names on the roster as well as I think the play yesterday, where you feel pretty good about the depth and the way that it's trending.
Yeah, it didn't look like the defense was it looked like the defense had plenty of depth, and there was a bunch of guys that weren't out there. And I think that's just, Lincoln Riley talked about this. He goes, we didn't say, but there was just a lot of holes last year, and there was going to be some spots were really thin. And if you lose a guy, there was going to be a big drop-off. And by the end of the season, there was, I think there was, a fairly big drop-off. So building up that starting lineup where you want to improve on, and I think it's going to be a better group of guys. But then also, if there is 2, 3, 4, 5 injuries, he doesn't feel as it's not like as big of a deal because the guys coming in are pretty close to where they were. So I'm just saying, like, the optimism that he has towards like what the roster, the way it was constructed last year was sort of maybe, I don't want to say smoke and mirrors, but there was there was a lot of things that he had to address, and it looked pretty good. You win 11 games. It was fine. But I think it's going to be better this year. And does that mean it's going to be a better record? I don't know. But I think the personnel is going to be better. I think the depth is going to be better. Like Chris mentioned, guys look, bigger, faster, stronger. Doesn't mean the defense is going to be a lot better. It needs to be a lot better. And if it is, I think they can certainly win the Pac-12 and potentially go to a playoff. But that is all predicated on the defense being a lot better. And just because you've got some guys that are bigger, stronger, and all that doesn't mean it will be.
Look at Texas A&M. They had a bunch of guys who are bigger, faster, and stronger than everyone in the country, and they still sucked.
Yeah.
So.
Very true.
Well, yeah, Anthony Lucas, one of those guys that he's now here in Los Angeles. He was another one of those guys that he's new on the front seven. USC likes it because he brings the size and the speed. On the deep, I think it was the first play to Brendan Rice down the left sideline, Chris. You can watch Anthony Lucas almost running down Brendan Rice, who considers himself the fastest player on the team, which just gives you a little bit of perspective about the kind of guys that USC brought in. And, like Ryan mentioned, doesn't guarantee just because you've got speed and strength, you're going to be a better defense. But it is different than, I think last year when USC had some guys out in coverage in the Tulane game, and Tulane went for that 75-yard plus touchdown. When you have defensive linemen out in coverage, sometimes it doesn't work. But I forget who was talking about it this week, but I think it was Shane Lee saying even when they put Anthony Lucas out in coverage, like, he makes freaky plays. So when you add the speed and strength, it can help you at least make up for certain things. And I thought it was just pretty crazy seeing on the field level highlights him almost chase down Brendan Rice.
Yeah. And overall, like, if what you take away, the roster kind of looks better like we thought it would. Didn't see a whole lot of special teams. But, it was nice to see, Dennis Lynch hit a couple field goals. Lincoln Riley mentioned that. So did we get a couple punts or something? I think.
Yeah, Eddie Chaplitzky had 2 punts. But also, I thought what was most interesting is that he kicked off as well.
Oh, yeah.
Obviously.
He did that for Arizona State, I thought, too. Maybe.
I did not know that.
I think he kicked for Arizona State, too, no?
Yeah, he was like, I think he was both. I believe he did both.
Well, the number one punter in the country, but Pac-12 is coming. You don't expect to punt a lot. Might as well get the most out of them.
Yeah.
And handle your kickoffs, which, as Lincoln Riley pointed out, they need more touchbacks in 2023. So they went out and tried to alleviate that. They'll have a kicker coming in who led CIF in touchbacks. So they have some reinforcements coming to help with that, as well as Eddie Chaplitzky being a kickoff guy.
So you get a little glimpse of special teams. Seems like it's better. Defense seems like it's better. Offense looks good. From what we saw, just knowing what the starters would look like. It's nice. You come away. Lincoln Riley said there weren't any major injuries. Like, that's kind of what you wanted. You got a lot of young guys, some reps. You got people like learning the system. You got guys that were there last year getting better. Heading into a long off season, there's a lot of summer workouts, 20 hours a week or whatever you could do with Benny Wiley trying to get everyone better, and then boom, all of a sudden we're in fall camp and you're getting ready to play San Jose State. So I think if you're looking at this from Lincoln Riley's lens, you're like, okay, mission accomplished. Like this is what we wanted to do, and now the transfer portal window opens, and you have a better feel for what you have. And he when we asked him about it, didn't really have any specifics as far as like what you were going to go after. It's like just try to find some of the best players. But I think there's a process. Like when you hire somebody that's good at their job, it's not willy nilly. Like there's a system. There's a method behind. You don't just accidentally get 3 Heisman Trophy winners and a bunch of guys that are first round draft picks and all that kind of stuff. There's a method to it, and you're seeing. I think Lincoln Riley's method in year one was really just trying to like patch as many holes as possible,
stay above water.
Yeah, and you end up winning 11 games, which probably was overachieving for what you took over a 4-8 kind of team. But and now it's just sort of like, okay, now we're not just patching holes; we're like building more foundations to kind of build for the future of the program on. And this next couple weeks could be really big for that, building off what you had from spring football, knowing what you have. And I'm curious to see what he thinks about, well, I thought we needed another this position or that position, and maybe we don't. We were a little deeper there than we thought or whatever. So curious to see which direction kind of USC goes. I don't know if you wanted to transition, Jack, into the transfer portal stuff, but maybe that's a good segue. But, that it was sort of like, we'll get your final thoughts on spring ball, but like sort of like, here's what we wanted for the spring, mission accomplished. Okay, the portal opens like the day we had the spring game. Now we can, address some other needs there to make things a little bit better. And if you remember, like Jordan Addison was, after spring ball. Eric Gentry was after spring ball. Like they made some pretty big moves after spring ball. And if they do a couple more, I mean, I like the way the roster is right now, better than I liked it last year, after spring ball. But you can make it even better. That would be pretty impressive.
Yeah, I'll kick it to Chris for the transfer portal. There's a couple guys that are in the portal from USC, a couple bear-sized prospects that the Trojans might be looking at to bring in. So, Chris, just with the portal now open for the second period, what are some of the vibes that you're getting? What are you hearing? And then also, maybe we talk about the couple players that are entering the portal from USC.
For those who are maybe not familiar with the transfer portal, there are now 2 windows where players can enter the portal. This second window opened on Saturday, and it's going to be open for 15 days, so it ends on April 30th. The first one was open for 45 days, so you can see this is a much smaller window. But the big thing is USC, we figure is going to be, quote-unquote, buyers in the secondary market. They're going to go after some players to add to their roster. But the key to that, Ryan, as the man who does the scholarship distribution chart, is they need open scholarships to be able to make that happen. NCAA got rid of the 25-man cap for teams. You used to only be able to bring in 25 bodies every season. Now you can bring in as many as you want as long as you're under that 85 cap. Yeah. USC, I think they're like around 83 right now. They have a couple spots to play with, but we're probably going to see some more scholarships open up. Not a ton. We're not talking like 10 players. At least that's not what we're projecting. But maybe 5 guys leave, go off, and or maybe they focus more on academics than be part of the team. We call it being processed, if you will. You can still go to USC, but you don't count towards their athletic scholarship numbers. So we've seen a couple players enter already. Cortland Ford, that was he already made his intention clear that he was going to enter the portal. He officially hit the portal today. Joshua Jackson, a cornerback, former wide receiver prospect, he is in there as a grad transfer. He actually entered the day before the portal opened, and you can do that as a grad transfer because it's a little bit different. But Joshua Jackson, Cortland Ford, those are kind of like the first 2 after spring. If you remember, Malcolm Epps also entered declared his intention to enter after the first week of spring practice or after they come back from spring break. So 3 guys that were there after the season no longer going to be on the roster. We expect a couple more to do the same. But again, we'll know more as the week moves forward about who's actually going to enter moving forward. But as far as names, I have a transfer portal tracker up on uspeople.com, which, outlines pretty much everything I just talked about, scholarship numbers, guys that have already entered the portal, kind of breakdowns on guys who have who are leaving USC, and then kind of the names out there that USC might be interested in. The two big ones right now is Bear Alexander, the former top 50 defensive lineman out of Georgia. He played at IMG. I believe he was actually at Texas. He's a Texas native, played at IMG, played at Georgia with the Bulldogs, part of the national championship defense. I believe he actually started in the national championship game, had a couple of sacks. So big boy, 6'3", 315 pounds. This would be a massive, massive get for USC and that defense. It would free you up to do a lot more with Keon Bars, move him to defensive tackle. You could put Bear Alexander at that nose tackle position. Now, USC was involved with Bear Alexander when he was a high school prospect. That was from the previous staff, but I believe they made his top 12 or something like that. And then after that, I don't know what happened. But yeah, obviously went to Georgia, won a national championship there. Looks like he's ready to move on. The early thing is Rusty Manziel over at our Georgia site, he reported, that he expects USC to be a serious player here and to look out for the Trojans to be kind of in the front position for Bear Alexander. So that would be massive. There was, talk of Bear Alexander's dad at the spring game and also his quote-unquote handler, if you will. That's what people call them, and, handles their recruitment. They were both at the USC spring game, which obviously that's a
pretty
very interesting sign. No Bear Alexander, but, the two biggest influences in his recruitment, that's putting two and two together. That's a great step for USC to get a jump on the ball like that with him going to the portal. So if USC, is able to get, a Bear Alexander, that's massive for that defense. That is what USC fans have been pounding the table for. Bigger defensive tackles, talented defensive tackles. Let's not just say a big body, but a talented guy who's a top 50 prospect in the class. And then on the other side of the ball, USC is, going after Cameron Johnson. I believe that's what his name is. He's out of Houston. So many names. But he, as it was reported on our Peristyle by Chris Hummer, one of our national guys who handles a lot of the portal stuff, that Cameron is going to be taking a visit to USC.
An official visit, I believe.
Yeah, as well as Missouri, I believe. So those are kind of the two contenders right now. All AAC selection, first team. He plays guard. We talked about how USC could use some more interior offensive line help as well as offensive tackle. So we'll see what that looks like. But those are kind of the two biggest names right now with USC ties to them.
Yeah, and I think when you're talking about big, it's size. Like, this is a big defensive tackle. I mean, looking at an Anthony Lucas, I mean, the couple of times, just when you would watch him, and he just looks like this big football player, and he looks different than a lot of the guys that USC had kind of had. And Bear Alexander, it's like national championship experience. Like, that's the kind of stuff that you want. And you'd love to get those guys out of high school, and I think the plan is going to be to continue to recruit high school as hard as you can. But the whole deal with the transfer portal, things happen a lot faster. You're getting proven commodities. You're guys that have played. And I think the first time around when USC went to the defensive portal, like, they were getting guys that maybe would have been like a Shane Lee, who was good a couple years ago and then really hadn't been playing that much, or like a Romello Height, who looks the part but maybe didn't have the stats. The production there. And I think now you're getting guys that can play, that were producing at a high level, Jack Sullivan or whatever. I mean, we've seen them make a whole lot of plays, and a guy like Bear Alexander fits that. And just, it's not an edge guy. This is a big body that you're going to find, in the middle of your defense that can make an enormous, someone like that can make an enormous difference, going forward. I think just, you plug that, you get that big guy in the middle, and then sort of everything, you can push guys out. It makes everybody, it sort of makes everyone better.
It opens up the entire defense getting a guy like that, just because you don't have to worry about Anthony Lucas embracing that inner Bubba this year. You can keep him on the edge, and he doesn't have to be up to 300 pounds. Like I said, with Keon Bars, that's another big body you can cycle in there. And they even move Keon to defensive tackle, so you have a defensive tackle or a defensive line of Bars, Bear Alexander, Anthony Lucas, or Jack Sullivan, who's 6'5", looks like a offensive lineman at times. That's how big he is. So you get a guy like that. That's a cherry on top of like a big overhaul of that defensive front. You're so much bigger than you were last year. It's not even like funny.
All those guys you mentioned weren't on the roster last year. I mean, so if you want optimism that they can be better, well, if you have a completely new, I mean, Thule's hard to replace, right? Led the nation in sacks, but if you're upgrading pretty much every spot across that defensive line, and I think a guy like Bear Alexander sort of like kind of puts you over the top a little bit. I mean, it's almost like getting two guys, not just because he's that big, but just sort of like when you get that, if you can secure that spot in the middle, and it gives you options for some of those other guys that can move out and things like that. And then, if you're going to get, I think if they hit and they get a couple good linemen, which is not always easy to do. So these guys don't grow on trees. They're not always, in the portal, and they go fast. They're very hot commodities. And I think it shows something if a Lincoln Riley and staff can go in there and get a couple guys like that, it's going to make a big difference, and we didn't see the difference makers on the defensive side of the ball coming out of the portal last year, and you're seeing a lot more of those now. And then the hope is that that's going to make a difference and make the defense a lot better. But it's going to be a really fun couple of weeks. Josh Jackson I like a lot. He switched wide receiver, corner, and he just seemed to.
And he was a star in that 2021 spring camp. After making the switch, first time playing cornerback full time, and he was a playmaker. He might have been the star of spring camp, but had the shoulder injury late, did not play last year's spring. He was in rehab for the most of the time. And then this year also struggled to get on the field just with injuries. So, yeah, very talented player, but, can't make the club in the tub, as they like to say. So you have to, your best trait has to be your availability and just being available to be on the field and practice and ultimately play in games.
Yeah, you wish him well, but someone that I liked a lot. I like Cortland Ford a lot. I thought there was a lot of potential there. I mean, a starter at tackle. Malcolm Epps was a guy I kept predicting was going to make big things. I mean, he's catching a touchdown in our tunnel vision intro, So it's not like you're losing the guys you're losing aren't. I mean, they're significant guys, but I think you can survive, losing these guys, which shows how much he's built up this roster. If this was like 2 years ago, that could have been your starting left, tackle, your starting tight end, and your starting cornerback, and now it's none of those, right? So, obviously you wish those guys well. I think they were all really fun to talk to and good quotes, and just you hoping going forward, but it opens up some spots, and maybe you get a top 50 defensive tackle, which again, like those guys don't grow on trees. So it'll be the next couple of weeks will be interesting. Any more names that go into the portal. And then, of course, USC fans. I don't know how many Bear comments were in there. Like people, we did a really good job. Like Jack hinted at it or just made a pun about the Bear, and they're like, "Do you even know who he is?" Like, yes, we know who he is. We're just not mentioning it yet. But
saving it to keep you watching for 50 minutes.
How would USC fans feel about a man named Bear on their team?
Well, you can't have a better name for a defensive tackle. Like if
Bruin, UCLA Bruin. I'm just saying.
I think they'll take the top 50 recruit on the defensive line, judging from the comments.
Sure.
I think the first comment when I posted Tunnel Vision will be live, and the first was like a teddy bear, like someone put a GIF of a bear in there.
USC fans might be using the bear GIF a lot more.
Yeah.
And let me just say, we're talking like Bear's already on the team. No, he's not on the team. And again, just what our Georgia site was reporting, that USC is a serious contender here, maybe even the team to beat. But again, we've heard very good things about USC and other portal players before, but that ended up fading down the line. So the NIL and transfer portal is very tricky. It moves super fast. So, you could be the leader for a team or a guy, for the first 2 days, and then everything changes like that. So just saying, you can be, very happy that, USC is going to be a serious player here, but things change all the time in the transfer portal. So, and in recruiting in general. So let's just keep that in mind.
Yeah.
Not on the team yet.
You mentioned NIL. I do want to get into that at some point. But Jack, if we have any more portal stuff you want to talk about, and I can, we can switch to NIL if you want.
I'm looking in the questions to see if anyone else asks about the portal. I think the only other note I have is you mentioned that if you're running out that defensive line and it's everyone new. You did lose Tuli Tuipulotu to the NFL, but didn't have a lot of guys transfer out from that defensive line. So your backup defensive line is basically your starting line from last year minus Tuli Tuipulotu. If you have Bear Alexander and Anthony Lucas and you have
Jack
Sullivan and maybe even Sam Green up there, like if you have those guys, your backups, which are maybe the guys that come in on those long drives where the offense is running hurry up, or if someone gets injured, you're bringing in maybe Dejon Ben, Romello Height, Solomon Burr, all these guys that we have mentioned, Corey Foreman even, who was the top player in the country a couple years ago. Like that's your backup now if you've got a Bear Alexander and Anthony Lucas coming in. So I think it's important to mention that USC is bringing in some high marquee names on defense and looks to continue to as well, but they haven't had a lot of big names transfer out on that defensive line because I think that they were even pitching to the guys, hey, we use the depth here and we want to have a really deep unit because they did cycle out at times last year, but you kind of got the vibe that they wanted to cycle through the defensive line more to keep everyone fresh and having everyone play different positions so that they can be versatile. I think that they'll run through a lot of guys this year, and if you keep adding to the list, that's just more talent you can run through as well.
I mean, look at Tyrone Taleni. Undersized, hadn't played a lot in his college career, 7.5 tackles for a loss, tied for second on the team. So they use that rotation, and there's plays to be made. And, having a guy that like Tyrone come off the bench who had, who's flirting with 10 tackles for a loss last year, that's a really good guy to come off the bench. And even though he's undersized, he showed he has a high motor and can make plays.
Yeah, and I want to mention Kobe Pepe played in the spring game, but he's still in the portal, if I'm not mistaken. Is that
as far as our portal sources say, he is still active in the portal. So
yeah, he might just be getting tape for his next, it'll be interesting, or he wants to stay. But I think he made at least a play or two in the game yesterday, if I'm not mistaken. I think they called his name. I'd have to look at it.
Sure. I don't recall hearing his name. Not saying you're wrong. I'm just saying I don't recall.
They did some wrong names. I forget who they said. Like it was like the Keon Barnes was chasing. Miller Moss showed some good wheels yesterday. Like he had some. Malachi Nelson, I think, did too. They took off and ran a little bit.
And Jake Jensen. It's kind of like everyone behind Caleb Williams. Maybe they're learning something from him.
Yeah, and when it's like a two-hand touch thing, the quarterback, like you don't have to be tackled, you just have to be touched.
It's free money.
They were still running and picking up first down without getting touched, which is something. But Barnes, chased Moss down from behind, and I think they called somebody else's names. I'm like, no, that was 92. That was definitely Barnes.
Yeah.
So they got some names wrong. But on the NIL situation, there's another player in the space, and if you were at the spring game, or if you've seen on Twitter, House of Victory, maybe there's, I don't know, I don't want to say remnants of Boulevard, but there's like a couple of people like Megan and Spencer, they're part of this, but it's pretty much a start from scratch sort of entity now, and if you saw the video, they've actually put significant revenue behind or resources towards buying the marks, so they bought into the licensing for USC. So it's a collective that can actually use like the Cardinal and Gold colors and the USC logos. They bought, they're working with, I forget what the company's name is, but basically they sell all the ads in the Coliseum and all that stuff. So it's like kind of like the marketing arm for like USC athletics, and they bought that basically that 2-minute ad essentially that had Caleb Williams featured in it, but former players like Matt Barkley and Rodney Peete and a bunch of guys like that. So I think John David Booty was in there. I forget what the other one. And former players, and they have it's focused on. So I had a conference call with these guys, and it's focused on football and men's basketball and women's basketball. But they will pick top athletes from other sports too. Setting them up with NIL deals. I thought really just when like Boulevard failed, that now is going to be. I know the guys from the Tommy Group. I kind of like what they were doing. The Engaged guys. There's other NIL entities that have popped up. I'm like, okay, I think they're going to do a nice job. I didn't really expect much from what sort of the void that Boulevard left, but to be honest, I've been impressed with what we've seen. The former players. This isn't a Texas-based company. This is like USC alumni. I got calls from people that were on the board that were telling, I didn't know they were involved in this. And like, hey, I'm involved. There's some big, kind of heavy hitters that are in this. They've got significant, money behind it. And that's the whole thing with the NIL is you need people that can write big checks, and I don't think with Boulevard that people felt all that comfortable, right? They didn't know where it was going or what it was going for. This is sort of like a USC thing. There's like former players, there's, a lot of alumni. It's USC people, and it seems like it's made some of the bigger boosters feel more comfortable donating money to it. So, I mean, it just launched, so you just saw the stuff. You can see that video on social media and everything going forward. Anthony Davis, I think, was also involved as one of the former players, too. I just want to say the NIL stuff is just kind of crazy. The landscape's changing. We might see consolidation, all that stuff. I wouldn't have bet that I would have liked what I saw from like House of Victory, whatever it was called, and I've liked it. I have been impressed from what they're doing. So I think, if you're going to get a guy like Bear Alexander, like you really do need people to be, guys that have money, or whoever, people that have money that are alumni that want to help out and keep players or get players to come to SC. Get that NIL kind of train rolling and have it be a positive. You need stuff like this. So it just launched, but so far I've been pretty impressed. So it's been a little different. I don't know if you guys saw the video on the field, what you guys thought of it or anything. Or?
Yeah, one of the things that it's really interesting to me, and that maybe proves that it's kind of already working. Boogie Ellis is in the video, despite deciding to come back just a couple days ago to USC, which kind of maybe shows you how quickly that this kind of thing can work. Maybe they see a player hit the portal, they see a player might be thinking about leaving for another school, and maybe they go and close things up. Because for a player like Boogie Ellis, who maybe was going to get drafted, maybe wasn't, but could go play in the NBA G League like Isaiah Mobley's doing right now, and who seemed like he was fully intending on leaving USC after March Madness ended. To bring a player like that back, a guy who's all Pac-12 first team, you got to think there's some NIL behind it as well. And so the fact he's in the video, which you probably thought had to be made for a while, and it wasn't like it was made on the spot just a couple days before the spring game, including a guy like Boogie Ellis, who just said he was going to come back last week, maybe shows you a little bit more about House of Victory.
Yeah, I think we saw the video they showed us on the conference call. I think it was like Thursday or something, but it still was being edited. So, but yeah, I'm sure that it takes a while. You got to shoot all that stuff. Like that was probably shot for a while. But yeah, what did you think, Chris?
I like the commercial. Just from like a visual standpoint, I thought it was really well made and well done and very attention grabbing. And to have all those former players and current guys, like I think Justin Dedes was in it, Marshawn Lloyd was in it. So yeah, I thought it was a really good visually and attention grabbing commercial. And you mentioned big check writers, Jack. I just wanted you to be on the lookout for Moneybags Manford. Just keep an eye out if he's in there. I just want to let you know.
We did get a donation from somebody.
Yes, we did. I looked at the question, and Benny, if you're still in here, there's no question. It just says, I just wanted to say to Ryan, Chris, and Jack. And I went on my phone to see if there was a longer thing attached, but it was just that. So either maybe he just wanted to say hi, or
you got to put the donos up, Jack.
Yeah, you put his. Did you put his thing up there?
I'll do it right now.
Yeah, shout him out.
Anytime a dono, you got to put it up.
Thanks,
there.
Benny.
Well,
we appreciate
you guys were well into talking about something.
Yeah.
You cut us off. You cut us off, Jack, for the donations.
And just so people know, so when Boulevard first started, they really were like the official partner with USC, and that was sort of unique. We hadn't seen that before. And the NCAA then came out and said, I think it was October, hey, you can't do that. They can't be officially. So basically, it's sort of like the cool thing or whatever. Like what could have been cool about Boulevard was like basically banned, so it couldn't happen anymore. So what USC is doing now, they have, if you're an NIL, they're not turning people away. So if if anyone out there starts an NIL collective tomorrow, if you remember when Student Body Right came out, USC basically like ignored it, didn't want to acknowledge it existed. They wanted everyone to go to Boulevard. Now they're not doing that. Now they're going to be more open, allowing your existence where they really were trying not to do that before. But they have a training program. I don't know how extensive it is, but I do know that like the three, NIL collectives that I know about that I've talked to the most, that Jake Olson's like Let's Engage, Alex Holmes, Keyshawn Johnson with the Tommy Group, And then, of course, the House of Victory, they've all gone through that training program. So you're I think you're a proud sponsor now, but you're not like an official partner. So even House of Victory is not like an official partner. They don't have those anymore, but they're a proud sponsor, and they also put the investments into, buy those marks, and so they can actually use all the logos and stuff. So there's sort of like this process that they've put in place now. But if some billionaire starts a collective tomorrow that's just going to like give a whole bunch of money to players. Before, USC was just like, nah, we don't want this, and now it seems like they're more open to that. But it's probably going to be easier if there is some sort of consolidation. The House of Victory is a nonprofit. Boulevard wasn't that. We've seen, everyone I talk to, if you talk to someone that's in the nonprofit one, they're like, that's better. If you talk to someone that's in the, it's not a nonprofit, well, there's problems if there's going to be a nonprofit, they think that's better. But, that they seem really happy with it. So if you gave a donation, it would be tax deductible. So, yeah, I wrote about a lot of the stuff in the War Room from Friday if you want to check it out. But this was before their official announcement came out on Friday. And then now you got to see the video and everything, and they're tweeting and all that kind of stuff. So
before I ask a question and then turn to a couple of questions, I will tell you now there's a donation on the screen. So, Chris, I'll let you read it and take it away.
I don't have my glasses. I can't read.
Oh, okay. Well, Manford says he appreciates the shout-out, and he calls you 10K.
That's Moneybags Manford, Jack.
My apologies. I haven't been here in 3 months.
This is an amateur hour. This is Moneybags Manford, and you're going to have to play that cha-ching sound.
Oh.
You gotta
See if I can read. Here we go.
There you go.
Nice.
That's his thing. So now you learn. Moneybags Manford's in. You drop the cha-ching. The NIL, who's not really in the NIL space. I don't know what he does. I think he's an oil tycoon. I have no idea. I made that up.
Oh, we got another one. I'll let you finish up.
Okay.
I'm done.
Yeah.
Okay, here we go. We've got another one from Marcus who says, thoughts on the running back / H-back group. And can I play the sound, or we just play the sound?
Yeah.
Okay.
No, yeah.
Will there be a test on all this information? Or?
Maybe.
Oh, no.
I haven't decided yet. What was the question?
Thoughts on the running back / H-back group.
Oh, H-back.
We didn't really see. Did we see?
Carson Tabaracci
He did
was
play a couple
out there.
plays.
He was out there, still a work in progress with that position. You'll get Cade Eldridge, the 3-star freshman out of Washington. You'll get him in the summer, and he's being talked about as a perfect fit for that H-back, as a guy who played running back and all that and everything on offense for his high school. So fits that mold perfectly. You got Carson Tabaracci, a former running back from his days playing at Park City, Utah. I believe it's Park City, but up in Utah when he was in high school. So they have some versatile talent there, and he's a guy who can catch and block and maybe line up and do all those things. So it's a very interesting position group, and I'm excited to see how that moves forward. I think you could be excited about that just because they have some new body types in there. You have Carson Tabaracci, you have incoming Cade Eldridge, as I mentioned. So those guys are going to be able to play with. You'll get Jude Wolfe, who back from his foot injury, who was playing the H-back position last spring before he got hurt. So we haven't really gotten to see what he can do in that position. So we'll see what he looks like in the summer and fall when he is back. So that's an interesting H-back spot. And then in terms of the running back, we've already mentioned some of those guys, but just so much more depth than last year.
Yeah.
You have Austin Jones, who could be a 1,000-yard rusher if he's a starter. You have Marshawn Lloyd, who almost had 1,000 yards in the SEC, and is a big guy, just has to stay, a little bit more healthy. But two guys that are capable of being bell cows in this offense, and you saw the explosive plays that Austin Jones had. His one carry or catch or whatever it was for 20 yards.
It was a carry, yeah.
It was a carry, and then Marshawn Lloyd with the wiggle, as I tweeted out, getting the spin, breaking across the field, going upfield, one catch for 24 yards. You saw those explosive playmaking, and then we've already talked about the two freshman guys who combined for, I believe, close to 150 yards rushing on like 15 carries or something like that with 2 touchdowns. So just so much talent. And that's even without talking about Raleek Brown. If they move him back, keep him at slot, whatever. But
Darwin Butler, too.
And Darwin Barlow, too. Is a guy who I think, if all things considered, if all things were equal and he was given starters minutes, I think he would produce at that level. Just has, obviously, just has to get the confidence up. He doesn't get a ton of touches. But when he does get some touches, I think he produces really, really well. But he doesn't,
he made UCLA pay, like Jack
made UCLA pay. So, I think he's a very talented runner. He's got some speed to him. That I believe he's East Texas. So those guys, They produce running backs out there. Got some big legs. So he can run over some dudes. So
he can squat a little bit, I think.
they're bigger. I think they're faster than they were a little bit last year. And, yeah, I think they're just as deadly. Shout out to Kyle McDonald, who just goes out and finds running backs. When we're talking about recruiting, just gets those guys, because Quinten Joyner and Peterson weren't like super heavily talked about national guys. And then, landed both of them in going into the summer, and then they both kind of blew up. I believe Peterson had close to 2,000 yards. Quinten Joyner had close to 2,000 yards, and he was an All-American for the NBC All-American game. So guys that just kind of blew up in their senior year, credit to him. He just goes out and finds running backs wherever they may be and develops them as well. So Kyle McDonald doing a really, really good job with that running back room. Would not be worried about that running back room one bit.
Well, yeah, you're 5 guys deep. You've got, one of the 5-star running back recruit that's changed to a slot receiver. So that's even 6 guys if Raleek Brown needed to run. And you talk about the wide receiver room too, and then you're like 10 guys deep. And I know that no one I think is worried about the USC offensive skill positions, but it's like just the embarrassment of riches that they do have. Ryan, I had one question about the NIL thing, and I know that now that you have kind of followed, I know you know people from the different groups, having people that have worked at USC, worked in the personnel office, and Megan Mueller, Spencer Harris. Do you feel like House of Victory has more of a tie to USC, or do you feel like there's any preference from USC based on whether it is the Tommy group, whether it is Jake Olson's group, or House of Victory? Do you feel like there's maybe a stronger tie?
Yeah, I think there would be, because I feel like the USC athletic department really wanted Boulevard to kind of survive, and maybe this was, but I don't think this was like Spencer Harris and Megan Mueller. I don't think this was their they created it all. I think there was definitely a big push from some powerful alumni, former players. There was some infrastructure in place already from Boulevard, like with guys like Spencer and Megan and bringing them on board. I think Spencer's like the executive director or something now, so he's kind of high up in this one, and he's the one that ran the call that we had, like a Zoom call with him, late last week. But yeah, I feel like the athletic departments, they're big in on this. I don't think they would have allowed the marks and all that kind of stuff. It seems like I don't know what was going on behind the scenes, but it seems like there was some sort of collaboration there. So, I thought USC was pretty much behind the Tommy Group when I went to their event, in Hollywood. Like there was, you had the whole team there, the whole staff there. That was a big deal. Like the fact that this was very different than what we saw, where they were basically just shunning student body right. So I feel like they were really supporting the Tommy Group, and having former players, I think, was a big part of that, and some prominent alumni. And this is another group that has former players and prominent alumni. So yeah, I think they're behind this as well, as far as but they're trying to do everything by the book or whatever. The NCAA doesn't make the rules very clear, but they are not pushing any envelopes as far as that goes. So they're not having official partnerships or things like that. And they went over some of the things that you can say, they just want to help Lincoln Riley win football games. It's basically that's all we're here to do. We got to raise money and help them win football games. And it's not a thing where they could say, hey, incoming quarterback, we're going to give you this much money. And if Lincoln Riley asked them for that, they can't really say, here, this is the kind of money we could get this guy. But they can say, here's what, the kind of range we would do for quarterbacks, and kind of give him, ballpark numbers of things that they can do. And so they've made it pretty clear, what the lines are, and there's going to be, limits of the communication or whatever that can kind of go on. But to answer your question, yeah, I think the athletic department seems to be behind this. I don't think you would have seen that video playing in the Coliseum if that was not the case. But they were really supportive with the Tommy Group too. I don't know where that stands, if that's changed at all. But they're allowing all these entities to exist now, instead of trying to, the Boulevard thing. They really just want everyone to go to Boulevard. A lot of people didn't want to go to Boulevard, and it just sort of all kind of blew up. So this one looks a lot more promising to me, and it seems like the athletic department's behind it as well.
All right. Well, we have some questions that we can kind of run through before we wrap it up. I hate to throw it right back at you, Ryan, but there is one more question about House of Victory from a fan. Danny asks, does House of Victory serve only current athletes, or does it also include high school recruits?
Yeah, so this is part of USC following the rules, and I kind of reiterate this every time I write about NIL. No NIL collective that I know of that's associated with the USC at all. No one's giving money to high school prospects. It's enrolled students, so student athletes. So if you're on the roster, you've gotten to school. Those are the kind of So indirectly, when you be like, hey, there's these deals that are potentially what you could get. Yes, but they're not giving bags of money to high school players to come to USC. So USC's avoided that at all costs. They've continued to avoid that. I know a lot of fans don't want to hear that, but because there's schools that are definitely doing that. But House of Victory is not engaging in that.
All right, Chris, I'll direct this one to you. Harold asks from YouTube, who were the offensive line starters yesterday?
Michael Tarquin at left tackle, Gino Quinones at left guard, Justin Dedich at center, Jarrett Kingston at right guard, and Jonah Monheim at right tackle.
Yeah. I don't know if we saw that more than the opening series, if we saw that same group.
Yeah, we saw that again.
It came out again?
Yeah.
Okay.
Cameron asks, question, I'm concerned that Tackett Curtis is too small for a linebacker. I'm going to take the courtesy of answering this one. I have walked past Tackett Curtis going to class at school, and it seems like maybe he's coming from an early workout. I think it's mostly on Wednesday mornings that I see him. And that dude could beat me up and throw me in a trash can if he wanted to. You have no need to be concerned about Tackett Curtis's size. And we've talked about Tackett in his performance in the spring game yesterday. The size and the physicality is certainly there. It's the other things that linebackers need to learn to clean up, but no need to worry about Tackett Curtis's size. And I don't think I'll even let Chris answer that one because I feel like that question maybe offends your Tackett Curtis agenda. Let's see. Jonathan asks, do you think that they intended to only start Williams for the first drive in order to not show their hand?
I think they just didn't want to get him hurt, and like Riley said, he's played a lot of ball. He doesn't need to go out there in the spring game and do 5 drives or anything like that.
The only reason would be to show the fans. Like if the fans were there to see, that would be really the only reason. But you got to see like the flash of, oh yeah, Caleb Williams, really freaking good at football. Sit down, son. You're done.
And then the Heisman presentation at halftime. So yeah, that was
cool.
part of it too. So
and that was so Caleb Williams got his Heisman in New York, but there's 3 copies of the Heisman. Is the player gets one, the Heisman Trust gets one, and the school gets one. And this was the presentation for USC to get it for the school. So now when you go to Heritage Hall, at some point they will be displaying the Caleb Williams Heisman. And there was also no numbers in the end zone, the peristyle end, so those were gone. So I don't know if they're going to rearrange so they could add another one in there. If they're going to put his number out there, I don't think they had those numbers there like when Leinart was playing. I think this question's come up before because Leinart came back, so basically your number's retired, but you're still wearing it. So Caleb Williams' number is going to be retired, but he's still wearing it. So I don't know if they'll put the number 13 up in the end zone. That'll be interesting to see this season.
I've got an inside scoop. I walked past Heritage Hall today and decided, let me walk to the window and see if it's in there yet. And none of the Heismans were in there, so maybe they were showing it to recruits yesterday at the spring game. And but Caleb's Heisman not yet in Heritage Hall. I will check back next week and maybe come back and see whether it's there or not, and maybe try and take a photo, post it on Twitter for any fans that are curious. But not there quite yet.
Yes.
But it will be there at some point. Midwest Trojan asks on YouTube, which of the Branch brothers do you think has a bigger better year this coming season?
Ooh, that's a good one.
That's a good one. I would probably say Zach, just because it's easier as a wide receiver to quantify that impact. I know as a defensive player, you have tackles, interceptions, and all that, but as a receiver, you could have like 50 catches for 600 yards and 8 touchdowns, and you're like, yeah, you're the guy. And it's easier to break in as a skill player than as a defensive player because you just got to go out there and catch the ball. You have to learn the offense, but he is a 10-3 runner, 5-star, number 1 overall wide receiver in the country. So I'm going to say him just because I feel like it's easier for him to break into that group.
Yeah, even I would agree. If you say both of those guys, you could potentially get like 10, 15 snaps a game. Well, Zachariah Branch is going to have more production in his 10, 15 snaps, unless, Zion just has a couple of picks or something when he's in there, which would be great, if he's able to do that. But I just think it's going to be easier. They're probably going to get like a small amount of snaps each, or a handful of snaps or whatever it is, if it's double digits. But unless Zion ends up starting and he's getting 60 snaps a game, then okay, that would be different. But I kind of feel like they're both going to play some. But if you're going to play someone as an offensive player, you're probably getting more production.
And Zion's coming off a knee injury too, so remember he's going to be slowly brought in to get him back up to full speed. So he'll have that disadvantage of coming off the knee injury.
Yeah, Coach Boyle on YouTube is asking the important questions here. He said if Mason Cobb wins the Heisman, whose number is retired?
Oh, that's interesting.
That would be good. How many? This is Mason Cobb has 1 year, right? He's like a 1 year guy. Yeah, so it's not like. So it would be interesting if he was like, a sophomore or something, and then Caleb Williams leaves, and you're like, okay, his number's retired. You got to change because like you can't keep this number anymore. Even now, like he's wearing it right now. You're like, technically it's retired. You probably shouldn't be
They
wearing
would
that.
put 2 13s up, one being the white for the defense.
Yeah. Would that would be the first white jersey put up there? I think that would look pretty cool. Have some contrast in there. A couple more. LFG on YouTube asks if, as rumored, USC hopes to add 3 to 6 more new inbound transfers. Who do you think are some guys who are likely to depart to open up those needed roster spots? Do you guys have any inklings of who might be some of those other guys to enter the portal, or is this a question that's a little too hard to answer right now?
With questions like this, I don't like putting out specific names because then it just creates like more rumors about it. Even if I heard a name, I wouldn't be throwing it out there. But I would say positions to maybe look at. I would say defensive back. There's a gluttony of defensive backs that they have there in that room, specifically the safety. So that would be a room to kind of look at, and maybe a little bit more on the offensive line standpoint in terms of their really back end reserves. Those are kind of 2 rooms to kind of keep an eye on, mainly so being defensive back.
Yeah.
All right, we've got one final one from Cigar on YouTube. He says he wants an overall team grade post-spring ball. So I guess we can end it out by each giving our overall grade. I don't know whether he says like a grade for how the spring went or a grade on the team. So I'll just leave that up to your guys' discretion, which one you'd prefer.
I don't want to go first because maybe he'll write back in and clarify.
All right, Cigar, if you're still in the chat, let us know whether you mean.
Are we doing like the position groups, or are we doing like just overall?
I would say
whole thing?
We grade it out of 100 for how you think that the team looks coming out of the spring. Instead of just grading the 15 days of the spring, grade it.
Okay.
The overall grade out of 100.
I'm gonna go like it's gonna be like B+ territory. I'm gonna give like an 88. I think it would be like.
Yeah, I was thinking like 85.
All right. Yeah, I think it's good. I mean, there's the offense is gonna be good. Like. I don't know, like if they're getting half the grade, they're getting like 48 or 49 or something. And then on the defensive side, like you're seeing some promise for sure. And we got to give special teams some of it too. I think special teams better, but so I think there's reason to be optimistic on the defensive side. But I think Lincoln Riley accomplished what he wanted to out of this, so I think it's a pretty high grade.
And they brought in some good freshmen that were contributing all over that spring game. I think the freshmen are going to have an impact this year. So a lot of good players with the transfer portal and then the high school class. So 85 is where I'm sitting. And I think maybe most importantly, they got out of spring very healthy.
Yeah, that's a win, getting out of the spring like that. And, you feel pretty good about a lot of the new players that you brought in. Sometimes they don't work out, but it seems like Mason Cobb. Do you remember how well Shane Lee fit in when he first came in? It seems like Mason Cobb's very similar and highly productive player. And you get a Jamil Muhammad from Georgia State, and you're like, I don't know, he's running with the first team. He looks really good. You're like, okay, some little dude, not little, he's not little, but from some small school that you never like knew anything about. You can get a player like that coming in and being highly productive. Like that's great. Someone that was in the Big Ten, like a Jack Sullivan, and the 3 players from Arizona, like could all start. You basically went to Arizona and put 3 of their best players, and they're now on USC's team. So I think you just wanted to make sure that those guys were fitting in. It looks like they are. Like Chris said, they're healthy. So yeah, I would give them a pretty high grade coming out of spring.
Yeah, I think I'm in that same range, probably like an 87, just with how good the offense is, and then you need to see it from the defense before you can raise the grade. I will say that with Mason Cobb being here and Shane Lee coming back, I think I made it a guarantee on an instant with Chris last year that Eric Gentry would be a captain this year. But like all 3 of those guys seem like they're always one-upping each other with the stories we hear about their leadership. That I don't know how confident I feel on that guarantee anymore, because that room just has so many guys that are being great leaders.
Well, it's going to be tough to find that other captain because like you have Justin Dietich returning, you have Shane Lee returning, Caleb Williams obviously is a favorite to. He was the captain last year, correct?
He was, yeah.
Yeah. So that's 3 returning captains. Like who is going to fill that 4th spot?
Who was the 4th last year?
Off the top of my head, and I'm stalling.
It wasn't Brett Nealon, right? They only had one lineman.
Travis Dye?
It was Travis Dye,
Dye
yeah.
was
And
it.
then I think Thule took over a bit at the end of the year.
Thule was a captain.
You're right.
Yeah, was Caleb? Maybe Caleb wasn't a captain.
Haha, I was right.
I think
knew
wasn't it Travis?
I think he was a captain.
Was he? Well,
I
don't
think
know.
so.
Pretty sure it was Thule, Justin Dietich, Travis Dye,
And
Shane Lee.
Shane Lee.
Yeah.
Yeah. I don't think Caleb was a captain.
I don't think he was.
So
Maybe, I don't know.
Well, you have to assume he's going to be a captain this
I mean,
year.
duh, yeah.
Yeah, you would think
Heisman.
so. Yeah, I guess it's going to be hard. I mean, wasn't expecting. You mean getting 2 of the captains back that could have easily left to go try and make it in the NFL, and Shane Lee and Justin Dietich. I think that makes my guarantee kind of. It's a little bit more up in the air than I was expecting it to when I made it last year. But that's kind of it that we've got for the stream. Ryan, do you want to tell everyone what they need to do with the YouTube video?
Yeah, make sure you go like and subscribe over there. We had up to 400 people watching on YouTube, and I saw on Facebook we're getting those going again. We're not scheduling the Facebook. I think Facebook took away the ability for us to schedule the videos, but they will go live, and we'll try to keep them, if we can keep on a regular basis. But if you put the alerts on, if you're watching on Facebook, make sure you click that little bell thing, get the alerts on. So if we do go live, you will get a notification. Like I get one on my phone when we go live on Facebook. And same thing on YouTube. You can like us there, subscribe to the channel, Inside Troy, and then also turn on notifications so when we do go live, it's not just tunnel vision. We'll do podcasts and stuff as well. And maybe we'll start doing that. We'll go live on Facebook for the podcast as well, which is kind of fun. Just, another avenue. And then we're doing them on Twitter too. So, but the comments from Facebook, and we got some Facebook comments you were seeing over there, right, Jack?
Yep.
So we're getting Facebook comments and YouTube comments, which is great. So we can kind of funnel those and put them on the screens. Jack was doing a nice job of putting a lot of your comments and stuff up there. And then if you're not a subscriber to USCfootball.com, we have a 50% off sale going on right now. And if you're a monthly member, you can actually upgrade to annual and get 50% off. So make sure you go check it out. It's a great deal. We'll have tons and tons of content going up. There'll be recruiting events going on every weekend. Gerard will be killing it. Chris just doing a great job. Jack will be out with us. RJ, 5-star Jarrett. We got everyone. Trevor's doing stuff from Arizona for us. Shotgun on the East Coast. Yeah, lots of stuff going on. Tons of content. No one covered. We had more people at the spring game than anybody. I think probably everyone combined yesterday. So, yeah. So make sure you go check it out. If you're not a subscriber to USCfootball.com, it's great. And we do appreciate the super chats in there. So we don't ask for that. Like we're not, but it's really nice when you do something like that. It's a little. We appreciate it. So thanks for putting those in. And if you do put, a little $5 donation or $10 donation or whatever, it pops up, so we see it, and it's easier to read your question and stuff like that too. But we don't, you don't need to do that. But we do appreciate all the questions, all the comments, and everything, and hope you keep enjoying the shows. We'll keep doing these throughout the off season.
Official list of captains: Caleb Williams, Justin Dietich, Tui Pelotu, and Shane Lee. So we were wrong on Travis Dye.
Dye was not.
Travis Dye.
I thought he was. For some
Mandela
reason.
effect me.
So you've got 3 of the 4 captains from last year returning. But it's gonna be a tough battle for that 4th spot. But anyways, yes, everything that Ryan said rings true. Thank you guys so much for tuning in and spending your Sunday night with us. I'm not sure, Ryan, if you plan on this being a recurring thing, but now that I have a car, we don't have to keep pushing it off every week.
That's sort of like we didn't really get to do the beginning of spring, and then I think you got your car, and then we're sort of like, we haven't done one yet. I don't know if we need to do one, and Chris is always like, whatever, because we do too many live shows. He's doing a lot. The Composite 2-Star Recruits podcast is like 4 hours sometimes. So he's in the studio quite a bit. So I get it. But I love doing these, and we'll, I think we'd try to do it more regular basis and stuff. Probably going to be traveling through the off season, but we'll pop in and do these. And if you guys like the times, that's great. It seems like the evening ones do better. Than what we do like afternoon ones for podcasts and stuff. And that's sort of what makes it tunnel vision-y is when we do them at night.
Well, anyways, that's all we've got for you guys. Thank you for spending your Sunday night with us. For Ryan and Chris in the studio, I've been Jack, and we've been Tunnel Vision. So thank you guys so much for tuning in, and we hope to see you around soon.